All right, let's call this meeting to order. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, clerk, will you read the roll, please?
Ms. Cook? Here. Ms. Elliott? Here. Ms. Hammond?
Here.
Ms. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Nyhus? Here. Paul is here, Ms. Swanson? Here.
Next item is to approve the agenda. Do I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Kurt made the motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Renee made the second. Any discussion? All right, let's vote.
It's not letting me, sorry.
Are you logged in?
I just logged out, I'll log back in.
You want to verbally cast your vote?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Next item, public announcements, recognition, upcoming events. Summer school is July 12th through the 29th. Are there any other announcements? All right. Next, public presentations. Lindsay, do we have any?
Nope, not at this time.
Thank you. On to information and discussion. First item is 2020-2021 CSI updates. How about if we do climate and culture first, since we have a guest? She can head out if she doesn't want to stay.
Sounds good.
So Mark?
Our climate and culture yearly update is in your packet, and that includes our focus for 21-22. There's also a document in the packet from the Steeping Wellness Program with lots of good data for us and a lot of nice testimonials and statements from staff members. So that's been a big part of driving some of our decisions. I've got Mallory here with me from the middle school tonight. She was a big part of our Steeping Wellness challenges, kind of the marketing end of it throughout the district, and so we're here to answer any questions. Mallory, do you have any questions?
Mallory was one of the biggest cheerleaders for this. It was wonderful.
Did you guys have participants from all the employer groups?
It's offered to all the employer groups, so it's offered district wide. So this year with COVID and with everything happening, it was really hard to push people to do it, but we wanted people to know it was a resource that was available to everybody. It was one of those things where when we got the feedback, there was, I really want to do this, but it's another thing. And so we tried to find ways to say it's really not. You're probably doing some of these things, or you probably have some of these things without realizing it, which is where I kind of tried to push and say, like for February, the challenge was tidying up your house. I emailed people and said, instead of focusing on my house, I cleaned up my desk. My desk is a mess. It was causing me a lot of stress. I didn't know where things were. So this is what I did. And we found ways to kind of adapt the challenge to what I heard staff talking about at lunch or in passing in the hallway. So it was kind of or as we were talking at our meetings, we kind of all would come together and say, this is what people at our buildings are talking about. So how can we apply it to that? So we tried to make it applicable as well.
It's also why she's an amazing special educator.
I try.
Any other questions or comments?
So the plans for next year are going to include that?
Yes, that's our request for next year is to include it.
Your budget request?
There's a new piece added to it. It's an in-person piece. Where they come quarterly. Actually, it's twice quarterly, and their hope is kind of the same day so we can schedule it and make it flexible for staff. that's just a matter of working through the schedule and making it work. But we really think that in-person piece will help us to grow it even more.
We recognize that when we started it, it was kind of in the middle of the year and the middle of the year of a crazy year as well. So we feel like if we're able to get this and hit the ground running right away at the beginning of the year and make all staff aware of the benefits and of what you can get from it, and it's not just for teachers, like you're saying, it's for everyone. I think that is something that in our meetings, we talked a lot about. We want to make sure that every person in this district feels valued and important, not just the teachers, not just the people that you see every day. We talked about the cafeteria, the people in the cafeteria, the custodians, the grounds people. Those are all people that are a part of this, which, I mean, so I think if we can have this in-person piece and they can come in, really inform people, not that we can't, but we think they could really help build this, and it could be a really amazing resource for staff, all staff.
And get that in-person piece rolling in August.
Right, during your teacher training,
Yes.
staff training times, that's excellent, because, well, one of the things that occurs to me that there might be some groups that are further away from the teacher or the building areas that might be either recalcitrant or simply don't feel like it applies to them, that you might want to target some, some time with them too.
Sure.
And help them to see how it applies to them.
Yes, I especially like the employees of the food service, because they're not, some of them aren't really even our employees, but they still work with our kids and.
And employees that work at night.
Right.
Think about that as we schedule these things, so.
And keep in mind that this would be used like a universal support for all of our staff. We also have the employee assistance program, which we still have offered to all of our staff. That would be utilized more for very specific concerns, counseling, addiction, things that are really specific to that person. Whereas this is more for like the universal proactive approaches. So we're hoping that it'll help mitigate some of those reasons why you would need to have the employee assistance program.
And it ties in with our, the idea of us wanting to get staff more involved together and pull them together. We weren't really able to do that this year, which was another challenge, another layer to that challenge. But with this, it's a great way for people to come together and support each other, and it's a focused thing to do.
I just want to kind of address the amount, because I know it looks like a lot compared to what we approved for last year, but last year was a prorated amount, it wasn't a full year. And then now there's that added in-person piece that we really think will make a difference. And when I think about mental health, I don't think that's, a large amount when you think about all staff and what it can do for mental health. So we will have this on the agenda for the next meeting for approval.
Oh, the
budget
budget for
piece
all
of
of
it.
the CSIs.
Just so everybody's aware, so be thinking about that. Okay. Anything else for Mark or Mallory?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, how about if we jump back to facilities?
So the facility goal for 2021 is in your board packet. In May, we had come to the board and asked for approval on moving forward with a high school boiler project along with some purifiers in our high school locker rooms. So that's reflected in our capital improvement plan. The other piece for focusing on 21-22 is the committee would like to, they will continue to revamp and relook at the facility capital improvement list, but also want to talk about a plan on how to better utilize our facilities for community use or other use, as well as some flexible learning spaces. So that's kind of our hope for the fall, to start looking at a plan for that. Any questions or comments from other committee members?
I love that capital project list. I mean, it's daunting, but I like seeing it and it highlighting what, you've approved or plan on doing, and just keeps us all aware of what needs to be done. So thank you for doing that.
And it was really nice to be able to prune this list too, because there was a lot of either, there was a few things that were like wish list things, but there are other things that were just being done, and there was no reason to
Maintenance.
have them here.
Yeah, more maintenance items were on there, so we removed those and wanted to just focus on actual projects that need to get done.
It's a very satisfying feeling. That's
It
why
is
I
a-
make lists. I like crossing stuff off.
I love the focus on facility use too,
Yeah,
because
that was one of the comments made last year when we brought forth our goal was the board had shared that they wanted that committee to look at facility use. However, this last year presented some troubles with that, so we did not focus on that, but plan to come up this fall.
yeah, great. Anything else for Jamie or anybody else on the committee? All right, communication and community engagement, Barb and Joni?
Okay, in the last month since February, when we gave you the update, we really focused a lot on coming up with a survey that we could give out to staff and families. And we kind of looked at the survey that we gave in 2018. And really, in the end, we had lots of good conversation about that and what would be the most effective. We decided that we would really prune the survey down, so we came up with 4 questions that we could repeat from now on. So kind of a new baseline in a way, but we think it's going to be effective. So we gave out the 4 question survey. Hopefully all of you saw it and responded. We got almost 200 people that responded, and I think the really good part was that we got lots of comments, which are very helpful. So we did get, when we asked how are we doing with communicating, we got a 3.99 out of 5, which is pretty good. And then we, like I said, we had some really good comments. One comment that was kind of surprising, I think, well, sort of surprising in a way, but was that people were kind of asking us to look back at our website and make our websites more dynamic. And keep them more up to date instead of just using social media. So instead of just using Facebook, because people said, you know, we're not all on Facebook, which is true. And I think maybe even, you know, with the times, more people are actually getting off Facebook. So that is something that we're definitely going to focus on next year. And the company that we use for our website has done a lot of adjustments and refinements, and it's a lot easier now to change content and to keep those up to date. So that's definitely going to be a goal for us next year for our school sites and for the district site overall. Just keeping that up to date and dynamic and making sure that that's where we're presenting a lot of information. Also kind of interesting was the idea of like making sure that families are getting the information and not just the kids. I think we're assuming high school and middle schoolers were sharing, and clearly they're not. So there was definitely a couple of comments about that, just making sure that not only telling the kids or just, you know, using an Instagram for kids, making sure that it's still going out to families too. So those were kind of the big things.
I think part of that too, it goes with communication, because 6th grade, 7th and 8th, we really do try to get the kids to be more responsible for some of that. And there are some natural consequences. Like if you don't go home and say that there's a dance in 2 weeks, you may not get to go because it's Friday afternoon and you're like, oh, by the way, Mom, Dad, you know, because we're trying to gradually release some of that responsibility from teachers communicating everything to families, but yet we don't want to catch kids too. Like we want to have those opportunities for them. So we just need to be a little strategic about how we communicate things and giving kids that first chance to communicate, and then we communicate as a follow-up through it, so that we're giving some of that responsibility to the kids yet too.
So we did change one of our goals for next year. We changed the social media goal because we feel like we're doing pretty well with that, to a goal around creating some kind of system to make sure that we're sharing with our families all the different opportunities, not just in our community, but in the surrounding communities that are out there for their kids. And that is often a question that we'll get, I know, in the office at TRIS is, you know, like, well, what about, you know, Evansville football? How do I sign up for that? You know, even little things like that. So really coming up with a system so that we can be providing that information for our kids. But there's also, you know, tons of academic things out there, activities out there for our kids that, you know, I think people just don't know about. So there are some software programs out there that we looked at, I think last year, or the year before.
It was
called
2 years ago,
Yeah,
Peachtree, right?
Peachtree
Yeah,
or
it was a
Peach
couple
Jar. So we are gonna recommit to that and really looking at that and see how we can come up with a system for that. Otherwise, our goal with the open enrollment, as Jamie has spoke to, that's, this year, it's definitely been changing every month, but looking really good because we've gotten a lot of kids that have joined us because of the in-person learning. And we did get a lot of nice comments. Wendy in district office got a lot of nice comments from families that are, even the ones that are gonna go back to their home school, which, makes sense, that's where they live in their community, but lots of really nice comments that we were very welcoming, that, the district was welcoming and made it easy for them to join us, plus schools were very welcoming and their kids really enjoyed themselves. So that's really nice because that'll still spread. And then some families are staying, so, yeah, so that's wonderful, that some
K
families
through
are
12,
staying.
we've got
Yeah.
families that are staying, so that's
Yeah.
exciting.
It is exciting.
As
Another thing that we need to learn how to celebrate, because
Yeah.
for many of us, it's just something that we're like, we just always do these things and we help out with kids until other families come in and tell us, these are the things that you are doing that we appreciated. And we're like, oh, you're right, those are the things that we should be celebrating and marketing.
One of the things I remember, and because Scott gave an update on, families really liked it, was this little welcome packet with like t-shirts or whatever that was sent to all of the people that were open enrolling into the district. Remember something like that?
That was done through district office, things that they sent out,
Mm-hmm.
things to families, yes.
I mean, I feel like anything that has that positive, welcome to Evansville vibe to it needs to be continued. I hope Scott has plans to keep that on his radar for ensuing years.
We're also going to be working with the climate committee to make sure that we are also communicating and celebrating things so that staff, like all the great things that are happening with staff, for staff, in our schools, celebrating individual teachers. So we're going to be working with the climate committee this year to make sure that we're really communicating those things out to our own staff and the community. But because like Joni said, I think we don't realize a lot of times what all the great things are that we're doing.
We were fortunate at the middle school, I wrote a grant to the EEF for some dollars to help. We were playing a monthly game instead of doing a monthly staff meeting, so we did bingo, we did guess the tune, that kind of thing, and then there were prizes for people at the end, and the EEF did give me a donation of $200 to help purchase some of those gifts, which was amazing. And then it also helped my pocketbook too, I'm not gonna lie. But just those little types of things that we can coincide with the Culture and Climate Committee, because people appreciate it. And people talk about it afterwards, like that was fun, we enjoyed doing that type of thing. And it's easy for us to do as a district.
Well, I was curious as to your communication chart. And did you have any surprises as you worked through that as to like who's doing what and to communicate what kind of information, and did you feel like that you ended up with a really robust process to follow?
Well, I'll be honest that that's been something we've worked on for a couple years, and it was just, it was hard, it was tricky, it was hard to, figure out a way of displaying it that made sense. So we did finally find a tool that we adapted that we think will do a really nice job. So you'll definitely be seeing it, but it's, it does a nice job of looking at the different forms of communication and who would be responsible for those. So no, I don't think it's any surprises, but I do think it lays it out nicely so that we can simply give it to, the administrators, we can give it to all staff, you guys, everybody, and everyone can kind of see whose responsibility originally it is. And then of course, people, it's somebody's responsibility to make sure it happens. They're not necessarily always the person that's gonna do it though. They may, delegate and have somebody else do it, but yeah. So I think we have a chart that actually people will look at and find, more engaging than. So it has like icons and it's more of a visual, so that it's
I would imagine, Barb, too, that once it gets distributed, you'll get feedback and you can tweak it and, gonna be a work
People putting it on their bulletin board.
in progress, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a lot less complicated than we started out being.
Yes.
Just all of a sudden, like, the basis of it was up there, and it's like, wow, actually, I think that's it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it worked out really good in the end.
It did.
So the budget, Jamie, that 9,000's already budgeted, right?
Correct, because that's carried over from when it was first approved. So any budget that was existing had carried, and that was one of them. Which you had the board
So
had approved.
I can't imagine that we'd ever get rid of this. Does it need to be approved every year through this committee?
It does not, once the board approves an additional expense, we don't ask the board to approve it each year. So that one would not come forth, it would be any of the new items, which last year was the first year the other committees brought forth
Yeah,
some of the items, and now you see them
yeah,
tonight.
yeah. I know, it was new, so that's why I was kinda wondering going forward, you know, what do committees have to do, so,
Yeah.
okay. That's kinda nice to know that
Yeah.
it's already budgeted.
It's already budgeted.
It's an easy one.
Well, it's nice to know that, you know, we're putting our money where our mouth is too.
Yeah.
This is what we say is important. We're gonna put some money towards achieving those goals,
It's
so.
been really successful. I mean, it's been, think about 3 years ago. Think about today. I mean, what a big
Just
difference.
looking at the document, when you look at everything, you're like, wow.
Yeah.
There's a lot there.
Yeah.
Shows how important communication is, right? Yeah, great job, guys. All right. Next item is CISA 2 report by Ann. You wanna give us an update, please?
Yes. So I have the pleasure of attending the CISA 2 meeting. It was via Zoom last Tuesday, the 15th of June. We had a guest speaker of, Jill Underly. She was our guest speaker. It was pretty neat. And I was just gonna talk about a few things that are really important to her. I think it's just important for us, if we don't know, of her, or we know a lot about her as a person. Teacher retention rate is down, and that's really important to her. She really wants to work on that. She really wants to work on mental health. She still thinks it's a major concern in the schools, and so she's gonna take a focus on that. She is, I would say, early childhood, giving kids an early start for their education is really important to her. She just really wants to continue to help build that in many different ways. I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. She wants to kind of really study and understand the data that comes back from the effects of COVID, and she really wants to, know if there was setbacks, what those setbacks may have been, and then what can we learn from that going forward. So, let's see, communication. She tries to surround herself with strong communicators. It's really important to her. We were just talking about communication, so interesting enough. I thought it was interesting that she actually chose to talk about communication as a piece of something that is important to her as a team. And like I said, she put really strong people on her team that are strong in the communication. So she was talking about educator licensing, and she would like to see it continue, but obviously that's her opinion, and so that's something that she doesn't see it changing with any requirements for the continuous ed hours, but that's something that she was mentioning, so it's something that is important to her, and she wants to continue to make sure it stays. She was talking about ways to get students more motivated and how we can help the kids want to be in the education system, meaning even beyond, their education in K through 12. So, she says she's seeing that the numbers are declining, and so she wants to see more kids wanting to be in education. So she was talking about more collaboration, maybe more co-teaching, even multi-grade, with multi-teachers and that kind of, system. And then she was talking about maybe even restructuring the school day. So all those I thought were, she didn't go into many of these. We didn't have a lot of time with her, unfortunately, but that was something that she was pretty excited about. So, and then we were talking about the state and the funding. That was probably a pretty big topic of the night, and how 2/3 of the funding is coming from the state, but that's not gonna continue happening. And so that extra money is gonna have to come from schools or the community. And she doesn't believe that that's fair, and so she was urging everybody to, get our voices heard. There was a lot of people that were part of that CISA 2 meeting that were going to be up at the Capitol. I believe it was last week. Earlier this week. And stating their opinions and trying to get their voices heard by the legislation, sorry. And then we talked about making more of an effort to put diversity into our curriculum. That's something that's very important for her as well, and she sees that people are starting to make those changes, but she knows it's a really big process and that it's gonna take some time. Going back to the early childhood, something that is important to her, but she was also talking about, not only making sure we have more of a focus on that, but she wants to make she doesn't believe that the pay is equal right now with the early childhood educators, so she would like to see that be more equalized. We were talking about public and private schools. She wants the private schools to be held to that same accountable standards that the public schools are. And then I kind of have, my questions back to you guys would be, what are some ways you guys think that we could be utilizing CISA 2 more? Or, they bring such value to us, and I just don't necessarily feel like sometimes we're utilizing them as much as we could. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about how we could, do that.
I guess I'm curious how often the district uses CISA, because
Yeah.
I know they do have resources. Oftentimes the board isn't made aware of it, but I think the district is.
Yeah.
So maybe somebody could speak
I can
to,
just speak from my perspective. So we have a CISA 2 contract, and so every year we have things that we budget for. Professional learning is number one. A lot of professional learning occurs at CISA 2. They bring in some great presenters, and it's offered for all the area. Directors meetings occur there. Collaboration opportunities occur there from administration to teachers as well. From a special ed standpoint, I budget for the lending library every year. So instead of purchasing resources, we can borrow them from CISA as long as they have them available. So this saves the district a ton of money, especially when it comes to assistive technology and assessments. Assessments can be upwards of thousands of dollars. Assistive technology, the same thing. Assistive technology, however, you typically trial before you purchase. So this gives us an opportunity to trial multiple different options for students prior to purchasing, or we continue to borrow as long as we can.
Yeah.
We're just very conscious of the fact that we don't want to be greedy and keep it all for the entire year, because other districts need to also have that opportunity for their students. I have for many years signed on to do dialogue with the attorney, which was such a minimal cost. I think it was like maybe $250. And as long as I kind of worked the system a little bit, because I knew that Joanne Hart and Tess O'Brien were contracted by CISA 2 to answer questions from Dialogue with Attorney, and they just so happened to also work with our district. So I would kind of game the system a little bit, and I would say, hey, here's a general question, but you have background of our knowledge, could you maybe answer this? And as long as it was general enough, it could all be, it was all charged to CISA 2. So I kind of, especially in my first couple of years when I just had a ton of questions and I didn't want to, have the district billed for all of that, I would go to dialogue with the attorney, and really all I had to do was say, hey, does CISA cover these costs? Here's my question, and never once was I denied that. There's a lot, we use CISA too a lot, yeah. I don't know if you guys have any others that I'm missing, but.
Professional development's a big one.
Should I throw
I've been a
CISA
part of a Rock Valley Elementary Principals group, and we use their site, you know, we meet there, and I know Jason's part of that, other administrators do the same type of thing.
Another thing I forgot is contracted staff. So when we don't have in-house staff or we can't find anybody, such as orientation and mobility teacher, we don't have our own. So we contract out with CISA 2. Same with our vision specialist, we contract out with CISA 2. We're lucky enough to have our in-house school psychologist, OT, PT, deaf and hard of hearing. Those are typically things that are contracted out of CISA 2 with districts our size, but we are able to employ them here. The price difference is astronomical when you are outsourcing, so we're really fortunate to have our own staff, but when we need to, we definitely lean on CISA 2 for additional staff. They also have like social workers, you know, for districts that don't have any, so just a lot of staffing options.
Okay. Is there anything that you guys feel you would like to know more about, or more opportunities?
No, I mean, for me personally, it was really nice to have the virtual options this year to attend our meetings virtually. I loved getting together in person, but it's over an hour to get there and back, and sometimes these meetings are half days, so you're really spending a lot of travel time. So I think that there was more attendance with the virtual meetings, and I hope that they take that informal feedback as maybe we continue with a little bit of a hybrid option. Some of our meetings will be in person and some of them will be offered virtual.
It does sound like that is the plan going forward, that they will kind of keep that hybrid, yeah. All right, well, thank you.
So Anne, a question for you.
Sure.
Do you get information from CISA other than just the annual meeting?
So I do occasionally get, I believe it's probably an email, maybe like a newsletter type thing from them, and they'll kind of talk about some different opportunities. But it sounds like we already have a pretty good.
But I wonder if that's something that you could forward to the entire board,
Okay.
just so that we could just have an FYI.
Yeah,
You know, if
absolutely.
they send you something just as information for us.
Okay, absolutely. I'd be happy to.
Well, and for opportunities too, you know, I mean, we don't know what we don't know. And
Right.
so do they have, I don't know, I'm gonna use my professional background and just say if somebody comes and they, wanna know if they have a service we wanna use, they have a line card. So they have a list of like all of the things that they offer. So do they have?
Yeah, on their on their website they do.
On their website, okay, so that's just a matter of going through and.
And they send us that each year with our renewal. They have a nice little booklet that we get, that show all of their services that they offer, in there for us to look through.
Awesome.
Because I don't know if they do anything with, like board development, for example, or I just don't know if they have that kind of service available. I mean, WASB does, and
Right.
independent firms do, but it would be kind of nice to see that, just to see if there's anything that the board could utilize. I just don't know if they
Oh, great question.
delve into that or not. They're probably busy enough, actually.
I could reach out and ask.
All right, thank you, Anne, for that report. All right, the next item is academic standards. So they're here written in the packet, and we'll approve them at the next meeting. Scott's taking a much-deserved vacation, so he's not here to answer any questions if you have them, but you can ask him next time too. Next item, discrimination, harassment, and bullying report. Janessa.
So you guys have the report in your packet. As you can see, our numbers are pretty low this year, with our bullying numbers actually being 0. This is the first year that we've separated out the reporting process so that bullying is labeled differently in Skyward than harassment and discrimination. So really just kind of educating our administrators and our staff and remembering that discrimination and harassment are really with regards to students in protected classes, whereas bullying is not. So that's how we differentiated that in our reporting process. So our totals historically have always combined everything together. This is the first time that they've been separated out. So we also have that confidential bullying report on the website, and I've always had at least one report, and I had none this year. So there were none there. There were none confirmed incidences in the buildings this year. There were, however, 4 totals for harassment and discrimination. So, you know, that I think is something that's maybe not something to get too excited about right now, because we have to learn from what we experienced with COVID. I think that some really great things happened with COVID. We had cohorts that were communities, they were kind of like a family, and so maybe there was less bullying because they felt more like a brother and sister, so we had bickering versus bullying. But I also would say that, you know, but we did have some accusations of harassment and discrimination, so that is happening. And the other thing I would question is, was there cyberbullying that went unnoticed? Because we can hear bullying when it's verbal, we can see it when it's in front of us, but if it goes undetected through a screen, you know, it's a little bit different. So keeping a lookout for that moving forward. But historically, in terms of our numbers, our numbers have been anywhere between 15 and 30 since I've been here in 2015. So this is much lower than usual. I would expect that these numbers do not remain as low this year, but we'll see. Maybe we're making some really good gains. You know, I would also have to say that we're putting a lot of effort into prioritizing that our students are feeling welcoming. They're welcomed, that they're feeling that they have a sense of belonging, and so that might help with our numbers as well. So, any questions that you guys have for me or about this data?
Well, I also think, you know, along with COVID is, you know, 6 feet apart, masks probably inhibited some of that.
Yeah.
You know, because when I first looked at this, I was like, no,
Yeah.
there had to be at least one.
Right, well, and I was talking to Mark earlier, and he said even, you know, typically these are occurring on the playground. There's a lot of incidents on the playground. Well, the playground numbers were so much smaller. It was the same students, and they were distant. So we didn't have as many numbers. I'm sure Barb and Joni, you saw very similar things.
Well, I mean, traditionally, the way the kids would verbally assault each other would be like whispering on the way past. Well, you can't do that. You can't go past, and if you whisper, nobody's gonna hear you under the mask. So I can't even read your lips, right? So that's something I never even thought about, but yeah.
Good, thank you. You're welcome. Next item, tennis court donation discussion. Jamie has here our answers to our questions.
Yeah, and this is gonna come back again in July. And my thought is to put it under information and discussion again, to discuss it, and then for business for approval. Because we're working closer with JP Cullen to get us a harder budget number than the wide variety of estimates that the architect gave, which was very high level. And so I said if we could really kind of zone in what we think it would cost here and actually get a contractor to give us a closer idea, I think it would help the board decide, are we willing to make the investment in this if we need to do more fundraising, or if you want to approve to allocate some budget monies towards it, and how much would that actually be?
The fundraising software that you referenced,
Yep.
is there a cost associated with that?
There is. They have not reached back out to me on what the annual cost is, but there is. Again, this software that I reference in here, I would see we would use for many applications. To me, it wouldn't be we would just use this for the tennis courts and then be done with it. I think that teachers would find this as a great way to do fundraising for their, whatever their projects are, or athletics and activities, or we heard Mr. Anderson talk about solar. He's already emailed me and asked, you know, are we getting that fundraising software, or where are we? Because, I mean, he's eager to go, so.
Well, it looked like you could track.
You can.
Right? Because I know one of the things that we've been concerned about is asking the same people over and over again. And sometimes middle school doesn't know what high school, you know, I'm just using that as an example. And if there was a system like this, I was just thinking maybe all of that could be more easily kept track of and somebody could monitor that and say, no, you already hit those people up,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it is. I have worked with this platform
point.
before, and it meets the staff's needs to create fundraisers, track, and it meets our internal controls. You can see them out there, you know, and I do say, sometimes people don't wanna buy pizzas and wrapping paper, they just wanna give you $50.
Right.
You know, that's a great avenue to be able to do that.
Yeah, so I was really curious, I felt that that came with a price tag, and I searched the site and couldn't find one. So,
Yeah, and hopefully I'll have that too by next time. Like I said, I am anticipating to hear from them. I just haven't received a response yet, so.
can you talk a little bit about location?
Yeah. So the current proposed location is in the Tris parking lot.
So taking up the parking lot or also the green space?
It would go a little bit into the green space, not too, depends how big. I mean, so that's the other piece. I mean, it just depends how big we really want to go. But that is the plan. If it's gonna be 6 court, it's gonna go into that green space. If it's 2 courts or 4 courts, we take up some of the green space and into the parking lot there.
And then do we know what the interest is of our students for a team?
Jason said he had a student interest, I wanna say roughly like maybe 4 or 6 kids, just ballparking that he had asked. Him or Andy could maybe give better feelers, but that was what I recall.
I mean, you can always grow a program.
Correct. And Jason did say that when we were walking and looking at it, he definitely has that philosophy, if you build it,
They will come.
they will come. You know, without having tennis courts, there's no reason to show an interest or ask. So he's hopeful that with the opportunity, there would be more students.
And does anybody know, are there city leagues for tennis? If that's what you.
I don't know that there's leagues, but I do know that they have tennis courts, but I am told that they're unkept.
Yes, correct.
So that they wouldn't be usable, for our athletic program.
I just was wondering if there's younger kids that are finding other avenues to play tennis that we would recapture in our district if there were tennis courts.
When my kids were little, there was,
Just trying to get some-
families, there were several families that ran summer tennis
I was
programs.
just gonna say that
I
too.
don't know if that's still going on or not.
We have a weekly summer camp that I've been aware of as a parent, but, and that's been at least the last 10 years. I think Dan Cobb may have started it. The Burton family, or Caston now, I think is their last name, I apologize.
Hangers were involved with that.
Yeah, so that might
Christensen.
numbers too, if we could reach out to them to see how many kids have signed up annually for it.
And then my other question, which I didn't think of last time, sorry, was would then tennis be incorporated into PE courses?
Jason had talked about that he did envision that. So I do know it was his plan and had hoped that that would happen. Because I asked, can they make it from there to there, have gym, and go back in a class period, and he said absolutely.
And also depending on how many courts, right? I mean, if you have a class of 20, it's gonna really be hard to rotate through on 2 courts, you know, but,
Yeah.
so, okay, I was just trying to figure out how much utilization it would actually get,
Yeah.
so. okay.
I would have to say too, and we talked about this a little bit last time, is the tennis courts do feel both school and community interest for me. If they're there, there's gonna be community members on there playing tennis, especially if they're,
But I'm assuming that would be after 3 and only on weekends, right?
Yeah.
You're not gonna allow them to.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, for that kind of money,
It
it'd be nice if they were utilized.
Yeah, I think it's just another offering that K-12 can say we have tennis, we have nice tennis courts.
Yeah.
It's a good public, marketing of something we have, and we have an offering for our community and students.
Yeah, I really like the idea of you having a more firm number, you know, of exactly what it would.
Yeah, like I said, his estimates were just so broad. We kind of just used an average of all those estimates because it was just such a gap. So I just feel it's probably easier to make a decision with a closer number. Are we gonna look at fundraising or allocating budget dollars for 20 or 25,000 or 200,000? You know, like, what does that really look like? And it makes it a little easier for you guys to make that decision.
Anything else on this for Jamie?
And if you think of any other questions between now and then, just let me know, email me, and I'll include them in the next packet. Just due to the size of the donation, it's definitely up to the board to decide if this is, you know, what we wanna do as a district. So I just wanna make sure I have all your questions answered, so let me know if there's something else.
Yeah, the student usage is really a big one for me, and whether they think about incorporating PE classes.
Yep.
And
And I can put them in here and, just get another response from Jason and include those in there, so everyone can see those.
Great.
I did reach out to the EEF, Corey Neely, but I haven't heard back from him. So when I do, I will let you know. I would be surprised though if they gave a donation. They're more education driven. Not that this isn't educational, but I would also be surprised if it were a significant donation.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of money there, but I was actually, when I mentioned EEF, was thinking more in terms of fundraising, that maybe they could reach out and partner with the district to help fundraise, as opposed to using their own funds. Because they've got a different group of people that they can reach out to than we do, so.
The grant that, Mr. Cobb, was talking about applying for, that has to be for the six court
Correct.
complex?
Yes.
It must be through the WIAA, huh?
It isn't, it's actually through like the,
National Tennis Foundation.
correct,
I think.
correct, it's more of a national level, but that's part of their requirement, so.
All right, anything else on that topic? All right, next let's go to policies. Second reading of policy 374 form, school fundraising activities, this is for removal. Policy 671.2 reimbursement of expenses. Any questions, comments on that? And policy 833 motorized vehicles on school property for removal. All right, let's move on. Employee handbook, second reading. Part 1, all employees, page 29, section 8.05, sick leave bank. Any questions or comments?
The only question I had, Jamie, is have you had any feedback from the, staff on these,
No,
either one of these?
no.
All right, B, part 3, all employees, page 63, section 8.01, holidays defined. Any comments or questions there? All right, so we'll move on to budget finance, and Kurt, take it away.
All right, so the first item on the agenda is the April and May financial summaries. Jamie's included the overviews here. Jamie, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Nope, I just was gonna point out in April, we got our lottery tax credit and just wanted to highlight, we don't receive any more tax monies now until August. Once the July payments are made, and that's about a $2.5 million tax payment we'll get in August, so it's pretty significant out of the 9.7 we receive. Again, it's just another one of my advocacies of how we receive our revenues. They're definitely not in line with how we spend it, but the other thing I was gonna point out on April and May is you can see that In April, 85% of our expenditures were salary and benefit, whereas in May it was 77%. Big piece of that is our purchasing cutoff is in May. So definitely get a bump in the other purchases of supplies and equipment and things like that at the building level. And then I just listed out the referendum projects that will be done this summer, and they are in full swing and busy already working on those.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That
it
needs
is.
to be done by August 1st is when we have, as contractors, to wrap everything up, so our staff have enough time to get the buildings ready to go before.
And so far, everything's on time? They're getting all the
So,
supplies and everything?
that we know of,
Hey,
yes.
good.
Yes.
A little crazy out there, so that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Can you remind us again what is in purchased services?
Purchase services is utilities, transportation, consultants, open enrollment, fuel,
Is software in there too?
software's in there. It's a pretty big piece. Yeah. Yeah. Most of that in there comes from the facility department, obviously open enrollment. Is another biggie. Transportation is another biggie. Utilities is another biggie.
So, I had asked Jamie at our agenda meeting, because as I was reading through all of the paperwork and all of the expenses for April and May, that there was this surprise to me anyway, educator effectiveness charge from DPI. And I was hoping Jamie would explain it to everybody, because I presume everybody was as surprised as me if they read it.
Saw it. So yes, we pay DPI for educator effectiveness, which is a requirement that DPI puts onto us, and then I just seek reimbursement from DPI for it. So we don't actually pay for it, it's just the process we follow.
They charge $11,840 for educator effectiveness paperwork fee, which then we charge them back, right? Basically.
We ask them for the money back, yes. Yes.
But I was just like, what? We have to pay for something they told us we have to do? So, anyway, it was interesting.
There are many things in the K-12 finance world that are a little different.
Oh, really? That's a very nice statement.
Any other questions on April and May?
All right, may as well go right into budget adjustments.
Budget adjustments, so I brought these forth because it is a state statute. We are to get board approval when we expend above the budget that was originally approved. So in your board packet, the attachment shows on the first page areas of adjustments. So you see some of the grant changes, common school allocation, we had received more monies than we had anticipated, and then the CSI budget request that had come forth last year, and then the preschool and flow-through grant adjustments that we had made. On the next, second and third page, that is how the board approves the budget annually, so we have to show where those changes actually occurred within the budget. When you look down at the expenditures and you see the 110,000 undifferentiated curriculum, 120,000 regular curriculum, you see the difference in the far right column, and those are just transfers that we have to do to account for changes within the budget. It doesn't mean that the overall allocation may have changed, it may have just been the actual expenditure did. So maybe we had more money budgeted in the principal's office, but they had more expenditures needed for the classroom. There's a different account number that is coded for those expenditures, so we need to account for them and adjust accordingly. So they're just transfers between those funds. But overall, you can see what the new amended budget totals are on the first page. And these I will ask the board to approve at the first July meeting. And then we will need to post a posting in a class 1 in the newspaper about it. to share with the community that we adjusted our budget. Any questions on those?
So for budget adjustments, Jamie, does it really matter? I mean, it matters to you,
So,
but I mean, when we report that, is it seen as a negative or?
no, it is not seen as a negative. For me, the primary goal to do it is it is state statute, the board should approve the budget if there's any changes. So say we didn't adjust our budget at all, and I never did any budget transfers through the year to account for these expenditures that maybe changed throughout the year. If we had overspent in a classification, the audit puts it in the audit.
Yeah.
So it's more of a housekeeping from my world to say, you know what, no, the board did know and approved the expenditures even though they changed classifications.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Alright. If there's nothing else, then we'll move on to the current year budget update, 2021.
2021 budget update. So at the top, as you guys always know, I say these numbers are projections and they will fluctuate by next week. So, but as we know, at the top, that's our current general operating budget, Fund 10. You see the revenues, the expenditures, and a deficit of about $12,500. That's our budget that we have right now for operating. The graph down below shows where the budget is in each of the classifications and where I anticipate us to actually end at the end of the year. How much money in those classifications will we have left? So as you see, after you look through all those classifications, I'm projecting we'll have about $327,000 left in our budget. However, I do project a decrease in our revenue. We had no athletic receipts this year, which accounts for a good chunk of our money. Interest, I have been telling people it's unbelievable. I budgeted $60,000 for interest and we've gotten $6,500. Last year we had close to $70,000 in interest. So I had no idea that the interest was gonna drop out like that on us. Building rental fees changed, our categorical aid changed. In Sage, we received about $25,000 or $30,000 less in Sage or AGR, than we had anticipated on receiving. So we have a few decreases in our revenues that we need to account for. So at the bottom, I show what the anticipated ending revenue and expenditures will be, and right now I'm estimating about $150,000. My plan is hopefully by the first board meeting, if not the second board meeting, I'll come back to the board with more final numbers, and if we can make a recommendation to transfer monies into Fund 46, if there's monies available into our capital improvement plan.
So we do that the second, we still meet the deadline, right?
We still
The
meet-
second meeting in July.
Yep, you are able to approve and transfer monies up until July 31st for it to be counted back as a prior year expenditure. Any questions?
Alright, next on the list is the fundraising report.
This is always fun to see.
Yes, this community is so amazing.
Yeah, we really do have an amazing community.
I also want to put a plug in for whoever changed the format of this report. It's very nice to see this year.
Yeah, Lindsay put that together, so kudos to her.
Yay, Lindsay!
Yeah, it was really easy to read and, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Next item, the semi-annual donation review. There's a document attached in your packet. Any questions on that at all? All right, if not, the next topic is the 21-22 budget discussion.
All right, so I thought it's a good time to bring forth some information on where we're at in the biennium budget. Not necessarily numbers, just where we think the state is at. So on the budget website, if you go down and click on 21-23 biennium budget, I laid out here what the governor's proposal was with some additional categorical aids, and then what Joint Finance Committee has proposed. So between when I did this and today, there have now been some new conclusions and wrap-ups in our budget, and what the Joint Finance Committee has proposed here does not change. However, they did get the clarification that this was not enough money to provide maintenance of effort at the state level, and that they needed to put more money into the K-12 formula. So what they decided to do, they said, okay, we'll go ahead and we'll put $400 million into the general equalization aid formula. And in your board packet, you had a letter that I had put in there stating what they had done. And what I want to make sure that we all clearly understand is it's not more money. So they put in that letter, they make it sound like it's a $2,900 increase per student. It's not more money. So I want to just talk through this so that we all can make sure when you are asked. I do hear this from board members. When there's a biennium budget, people will say, well, you're getting more money. We will hear, well, you're getting more money. And I want you to be able to say, no, we're not. The formula doesn't work that way. Or you can reference them out to the budget website, which is located on our business services page.
Well, because the letter says this equates to a $2,900 increase per student statewide.
Correct.
So, I mean,
It's deceptive.
Yes.
it's
So,
easily misunderstood, for sure.
I wanted to come here. So, scroll down. Where are you? So, what I want to point out is this graph here. Revenue limit authority, that's a total amount of money that we can receive between general aid and tax levy. So when you take the revenue limit authority, total amount of money we can get, and you subtract how much aid they will give us, the state will allocate to us, equals the amount of taxes that we can levy to our citizens. If we get more aid, that means it's gonna be less money to the taxpayer. It's not more money to go into our budget for operational expenses, it's less to the taxpayer. And in that letter that I attached in the board packet, they're very clear that they've suddenly decided they wanna be good supporters to the Wisconsin citizen and decrease taxes. And that's what this is. This isn't about giving K-12 more money. It's about decreasing the tax levy. So I just want to make that clear and that we understand that that's what it is, because people don't understand it. They're going to hear $400 million more in K-12 aid. You're getting more money. No, we're not. So I would just ask you to please share that when you hear that. So where it sits right now is it sits to wait to go to the Senate and Assembly. I have not heard a date. We have heard no timeline on when they anticipate to move this forward to get voted on. I have drafted a letter to send out to our legislators. Shared it with Lori, Janessa, and Scott, so we could all kind of put our input in it and work on that together. And so I'm hoping to share that with Lori on Monday and then get that sent out. So once we send that out, we'll share it with the board as well, just so you can see what we've put out there. But we definitely need to ask our legislators to consider allocating some monies to K-12. in this biennium budget, but I'm hopeful.
So in case I get some interested citizen to come up to me, so when the legislature says, let's see, where's that stupid letter? Okay, so when they say that this is $2,900 increase per student statewide. Effectively, that pot is a $2,900 increase per student.
Correct.
However, because they must balance,
Yes.
that means the other pot is $2,900 per student lower.
Correct. Yeah, it would decrease, so that's what I mean. I mean, the letter is, and I don't know who all, receives this or has read it in our board packet, but it's very deceptive of what's actually happening. And this is very common. I mean, this doesn't surprise me by any means. This is typically how it goes. When they put more money into the aid formula, that's how it is always projected. We're putting more money into the equalization aid. They're not lying. It's just people don't understand how the formula works, so they don't know that that means it's a net zero increase to the actual school district.
So the clearest statement is when they say, today we announce great news, Republicans are passing a 3.4 billion tax cut.
Yes.
That's the true statement.
That's the true statement.
That's a true statement.
For education.
Correct. Yes. So that's why I bring this forth today, just to kind of talk about where they're at, in case you haven't heard or not following the biennium budget storyline like I have, just to kind of keep you in the loop that that's where we're at. My goal is for the Budget Finance Committee in July, we'll plan to bring some numbers as to where the budget looks like it is. And hopefully by then, we've got some more concrete information on where to go. Because the hard part about all of this is I feel confident that we could allocate the ESSER 2 monies to help support our budget, like the other 400 plus districts in the state are going to have to do. But we really can't do that with the ESSER 3 monies until we know that this is approved. Because the ESSER 3 monies was tied to the maintenance of effort. And so they believe by allocating this $400 million, they are meeting that maintenance of effort. And I'd like to make sure that we are positive that we will get the ESSER 3 monies and that those are meeting the maintenance of effort before we start talking about using them.
I do not see how they can possibly think that's maintenance of effort. When they give with one hand and take with the other, the equal amount. I don't understand how they consider that to be maintenance of effort.
So one thing that I wanted just to bring up again, I know I've brought it up several times before. So, Jamie mentioned that she drafted a letter. WASB has a legislative advocacy division, and they want a board member from each school board as a contact. And I know we talked about it, but we've just never been able to get somebody to commit. So I'd like the board to think about that, because then what they'll do is they'll funnel all that information. Hey, this is what's coming up, this is the bill, this is what we want you to do, or this is what we're advocating for, so that more boards get involved. And this is a prime example of where, our voices need to be heard, even if it doesn't change anything. Here, maybe it'll change something later, so.
Does that also involve like funneling a collective voice back through WASB from the individual boards to?
Well, I know that they'll do things like they'll send you a sample letter, that boards can sign off on. I know that in the past, when Act 10 was happening, there were boards that got together and brought legislators in to tell their stories. So it's a way to really get a more collective voice. And then, of course, going to the Capitol, if you really want to get involved. But they funnel all that, so it's easy. It's just a designated person to take that on, to say, hey, here's what's happening, what does this board want to do about it? That sort of thing. That's the extent of what I know. Does that answer your question?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So if we can just think about that, because I'd really like to have that be a part of the board service, if somebody's willing to, or even if two people are willing to share it. You know. I'm sure they don't care how many people they send an email to.
Any other questions on the 22 budget update?
Good news, good news. We want good news.
Yeah, I don't have much good news, but I can tell you from my seat, many business managers will just be happy once we can work a plan. I mean, when you're working in limbo and you can't plan how to move forward, it just makes, it makes things very difficult.
Okay, then for, next time, a month from now, you know, obviously we'll have financial summaries, budget update, and then more budget discussion for the upcoming school year. I don't know if there's anything else that would necessarily be part of it.
Yeah, I'll do the wrap up of the 2021 and maybe a transfer to Fund 46
Oh, yeah, yep.
would be added on there. And even if there isn't a transfer recommendation, there'll at least be a discussion about 2021, depending upon how the year ended. And then another 21-22 budget update. We'll probably plan to talk about that, I'm gonna guess, every month until we have our annual meeting in September. And that should just help you as a board feel good once we actually get to the annual meeting, just to know where we're at and how it's been put together, so.
So Fund 46 is an option, right?
Yes.
There's other options of just spending that money, right?
Correct, before June 30th.
Right. So, do you guys ever have this list of?
Facilities and curriculum, they definitely always have a list.
Okay.
When we get down to having $150,000 left, that's not really feasible to know in April for ordering and getting it and using it come June.
Because you have to use it, right? You have to,
Correct.
you can't just.
That's such a minimal amount. Now, if I knew in March or April, oh my gosh, it looks like we're gonna have $500,000 left, then I would have been having some conversations figuring it out, but being this minimal of amount, it's March and April, it's too early to project what could happen.
Yeah, that helps, thanks.
Okay, I guess that's it. Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah.
All right, we have no business action items, so let's move on to consent. Do I have a motion for consent? Or first, does anybody want to pull anything from consent? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve consent agenda items A through D.
Anne made the motion, is there a second?
Second.
Melissa made the second, and let's vote.
Computer just shut off again, so.
Would you like to verbalize?
Hi. Sorry. Oh, there it is.
Motion passes 7-0. Next item is the next board meeting agenda.
I think we need to add a 5C, approval of tennis court donation.
Yeah, it's
Or is that gonna be the second board meeting?
No, it will be at this board meeting, and we're gonna put it under, my recommendation was to put it under information discussion, so we can talk about it, then put it under business, to be able to actually make the motion.
Is that not, it is the discussion part. Oh, no, it's not, never mind. So I added also on 2, a 2E, and 5C. Like all the other things that we added during the agenda.
Yeah.
We also won't have any first reading of policies. We had a we had a policy meeting, but we decided all those policies needed to be reviewed by administrative team first. So we sent them back. We just weren't comfortable. We made some, just minor changes, but we thought admin really needs to look at these. It was on staff misconduct and staff conduct, and so we really wanted the whole admin team to review those before the policy committee got them, so. Then if anybody has anything else, just let me know. All right, anything else on the agenda? All right, a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Ooh, Kurt got it first. Melissa made the second. All those in favor, I think we can do voice vote on this one. Okay. Thank you, Lindsay. Motion carries 7-0, we're adjourned. Thank you, guys.